Aloha, namaste. My name is Janapati Das, and thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Let's see if I can adjust this a little bit down. Okay. Excuse me for a second while I make a few adjustments here. My stand. Okay. Tonight is Yoga Wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'd like to offer my respects to you for tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching this class. I'd like to also offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual teacher, Jagat Guru Siddhaswarapananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, who has taught me everything I know about Bhakti Yoga and the Bhagavad Gita as it is. I have no ability to speak except for the mercy of my spiritual master and of the mercy of my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We will be going through the chapter 2, part of chapter 2 tonight. This is the book we're going to be going through, the Bhagavad Gita as it is, by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we'll start off with the prime benediction for humanity, the greatest form of transcendental meditation, and that is kirtan meditation, which we chant the names of Krishna. So in this process, you can sit back and listen first time through, second time through. If you like, you can sing back with me in a call and response. I will sing a couple mantras, one to give respects to my spiritual master, and also to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who has inaugurated this wonderful form of kirtan meditation in this day and age of Kali. So we will go ahead and get started as soon as I figure out which kirtan song I'm going to sing. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Sila Swarupananda Namahamsa Tinamine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Haribol, Hare Krishna. I was born in the darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, welcome again. Let's see if I can adjust this down a little. Okay. So, welcome again to Bhagavad Gita, the yoga wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. We're going to talk about that term yoga tonight. And oftentimes when people think about yoga, you know, they think, well, can I possibly, you know, stand on my head or twist my body around and you know, do back bends or go into a pretzel or hold my breath for long periods of time or whatever. This kind of idea of hatha yoga, you know, the popular sort of idea of commercial yoga. But yoga is actually a very deep and philosophical and spiritual meaning. And it's yoga is the similar idea of yukta or yoga is connect or to reconnect or to reestablish the relationship with the Supreme Person. And so the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God, is actually a love song. It's an eternal relationship of love between between the Krishna and the living entity, but also with your spiritual master, right? So we're studying the wisdom, the understanding of the hidden qualities and relationships in spiritual life. In other words, our relationship of the deep understanding of our relationship with the Supreme Person, Krishna, Sri Krishna. And Bhagavan is Sri Krishna, you know. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he is also the main character in reality also, but just also in this story of the Bhagavad Gita, right? Bhagavad Gita, of course, is on the battlefield. You can see here Krishna is with his dear devotee Arjuna, who is also a character in this story. But you know, the story. When we say story, these are not just stories. They're also not just. They are history. It's been very fascinating history, but they're also a deep reflection of our own personal experience in the material world and our own relationship with Krishna. So when we talk about, you know, Arjuna and Krishna, we are talking about Arjuna and Krishna. There is a spiritual reference to the Bhagavad Gita, or the Song of God, but we're also talking about our own experience with the Supreme Person, with Krishna, all of us, all living entities. And so, in the story of the Bhagavad Gita, as we know, Arjuna, he has this dilemma. Sorry, something dropped there. And he has this dilemma in the material world, in the situation with the battle, a great battle between family members, actually between the Kuru dynasty and the Pandava brothers, one of which is Arjuna, right? And their cousins, led by Duryodhana and their father Dhritarashtra, and all the brothers, and many other people in this battle, right? This great battle. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it's actually set in a battlefield, but right before the battlefield. So Krishna is taking the chariot as by request from his devotee Arjuna. He's leading the chariot. As you can see here, Krishna agrees to ride the chariot for Arjuna. Even though he's the Supreme Person, he actually is very apt to serve his devotee. And he's asked by Arjuna to go out into the battlefield, right? So, so Arjuna can actually observe who's on the side. So then, what happens, of course, as we probably know, is that Arjuna is put into a situation where he is confused about what he should be doing, because he sees all of his family members and he's about to engage in this battle where everybody will pretty much be killed. Most people will be killed. So it's millions of people are going to be killed in this battle. And Arjuna becomes compassionate, and he decides that he doesn't really want to fight. But he puts the question to Krishna about what I should do. And so he's actually put in this situation that it's a very wonderful thing, because we can observe the spiritual wisdom that Krishna gives Arjuna and gives to all of us, because we are constantly faced with dilemmas in our existence in this material world. For one is a very big dilemma, and this is we're going to read from chapter 2, which is called The Content of the Gita Summarized. And it's wonderful because there's so many little things that are the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita is touched upon different aspects. We talk about our identity. It's talked about the identity, where Krishna is telling, because Arjuna, I should say, the preface is that Arjuna lays out all these rules and regulations, all, the Vedic system. We're going to talk about it, which is also in chapter 2. We're going to talk about the Vedic system, the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, and all these rules and regulations in the Vedas that are set up for society to help elevate society to a higher spiritual goal. Arjuna names off all kinds of things in the Vedas why the battle is bad, right? These are all things that came from Krishna originally, but Arjuna feels it necessary to say, well, I think it's a bad idea because of this, and I think it's a bad idea because of that, and we're going to kill off all the men, and then the women will be left alone, they won't be protected, and all these things that Arjuna basically lays out for Krishna. And then Krishna says, it has stated early on in the chapter 2 that he says, while speaking like a learned man, you're actually sounding like a fool, because nobody who's a wise person or a sober person laments neither for the living nor the dead. And then he starts to go into identity. Actually, Arjuna, none of these people on the battlefield are actually who you think they are. They're actually all spirit souls. Never was there a time, chapter 2, verse 12, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor any of us shall we ever cease to be. So there he's saying, well, okay, either the body is going to exist forever, or there's something beyond the body. And that's, as we know from the science of identity, the spirit soul is covered by a subtle material body and a gross physical body, earth, water, fire, air, then the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego, right, ahankara. So he lays out that actually the spirit soul is covered by material and subtle material energy, which are not really ourselves. In other words, aham brahmasmi, we are spiritual in essence. We are not our material body, and we are actually eternal, that when the body dies, the soul does not die. It cannot be withered by wind, as it states later. It cannot be cut into pieces. It is immovable. It is eternal, ever existent. There's so many terms. It's dazzling. Sometimes people are so overwhelmed by it, some people cannot even understand it. And so when you tell people also that the soul is the living entity and the body is not who we are, they can't fathom that. It's so radical. It is such a radical concept. It's actually an amazing concept, even though it is so simple and so obvious to understand that, wow, yeah, this is not who I really am. This body that is growing up, and we can see this changes, right? As the embodied soul continually passes through boyhood or youth, to middle age to old age and then dwindles, right? So the soul continually passes on to another form. And then there's another reference which it likens the body to garments, right? Sometimes when we go to bed, we don't think, we take off our clothes, or if we've worn out our clothes, we throw them away and we get new clothes. And so this is the existence of reincarnation. So we understand that the identity, the spiritual entity, is moving through bodies due to the karmic reaction of what they're doing. So there we have identity, and then we also have this understanding of relationship. We understand that the living entity, while spiritual in essence and non-different than the Supreme Soul or the Supreme Lord, same in energy but not the same in quantity, right? So we are minutely, it's a spark of the Supreme, right? So we understand our relationship, our identity, our relationship, or our position, right? And then we understand later on the function of rendering. Our role is to render service, because we render service regardless of in the conditioned state of thinking where the body, we're constantly serving different things, and ultimately serving the Supreme Lord through the material energy, which is also his energy, right? But the direct service of surrender to Krishna, surrendering in service and love, and doing all of our activities for Krishna, aka Krishna consciousness, is actually the highest form and the eternal function of the living entity. So that's all really all touched upon in chapter 2. It's really fascinating. I always have to, the whole Bhagavad Gita is an amazing scripture, and it's the living word of Krishna. So you can reflect upon these things. You can reflect upon the commentary that we're going to get into of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is a pure devotee, and only because we can hear from our spiritual teachers can we really delve into this. And this is why Bhaktivedanta, because he took the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita and applied it, which says also in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that you should just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, surrender unto him, and render humble service to him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge to you because he has seen the truth, because he's applied this same thing before. So here we have, this is what's wonderful about the stories of Krishna, whether it's in the Srimad Bhagavatam or any of the stories in the Bhagavad Gita or the Chaitanya Charitamrita, any of the scriptures, these histories, the Puranas, anything, they all are wonderful stories, but they also are deep philosophical and spiritual reflections of ourselves. So when we are reflecting upon the Bhagavad Gita, we can reflect upon our own internal and struggles that we deal with, and we can take shelter, as Krishna instructs to do in the Bhagavad Gita, ultimately in the end, by just surrender unto me. Just, abandon all the varieties of the different religions, which we're going to get into in this chapter 2. We're going to talk a little bit about the idea of the Vedas and the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, and what does that mean really to our own lives and how we approach spiritual life. But we can just surrender to God. We can surrender to Krishna, and that he will give us all protection. He will give us protection. He's protecting Arjuna. He will protect you in your struggles. So let's get into it. Enough of my talking, and let's hear it from the pure devotee of Krishna. So we're going to actually, we've touched, you can go back and you can read this chapter 2 and read the purports. It's just ever reflecting of the truth, and you can feel that in your heart by the practice of kirtan, right? The practice of Krishna consciousness and sadhana bhakti, by reading the scriptures and realizing that's exactly what I'm experiencing. So I'm going to go right to this text 46 and read through this a little bit. So, all purposes that are served by the small pond can at once be served by the great reservoirs of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. You have a right, so this is Krishna telling Arjuna, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Be steadfast in yoga. There's our word yoga. O Arjuna, perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. And so then it goes on. We can just read more, but I want to touch upon this idea of the small pond and the great reservoir. Reservoir, of course, is the source of water, right? And what Bhaktivedanta is going to talk about here, and what's true, is that the Vedic rules and regulations were originally set up for society to, in previous ages, to help to basically run a society, run a society in a spiritual sort of fashion, but allowing certain people to engage in material endeavors and fruitive activities, but at that same time regulated in a way that would help elevate them. So we can actually see these there are different scriptures that were set up, which were probably spin-offs of which were probably Vedas, like the Quran. If you read the Quran, it's got the similar kind of ideas. It sets up ways for people to exist. Or the Torah, this was ways and rules, and in the Bible it was also set up, the rules and regulations by the Hebrews who were under the rule of the Egyptians, were given very strict kind of rules and regulations to help elevate it exist, but what is said here is very interesting, because Krishna is telling Arjuna that the great reservoir of water, what is the great reservoir of water? Is Krishna is the great reservoir of water. Krishna, loving service, bhakti yoga, is the ultimate epitome of the reservoir of water. All the small ponds, all these rules and regulations are basically helping people come to this great reservoir of water, finding the source. And that's why it says, similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. If you don't know the purpose of them, and that's the conclusion here, you can get caught up in the rules and regulations. And so what we see in this current age is people trying to follow these rules and regulations, whether it's the Vedas, the Vedic systems, or rules and regulations in religion, for the purpose of not really seeing where it's going. Like, okay, I'm doing this and being a religious person, and I'm following these, I'm saying these many, going this to mass this many times, but not really seeing the purpose of, it's supposed to elevate our consciousness. And so in the age of Kali Yuga, which is the current age that we're in, the Iron Age, as we would know, that there are 4 different ages in the cycle of time in the material world, and the lowest form and the most degraded form is Kali Yuga, and that's the current age that we're in, where there's a lack of religiosity, there's an increased desire for material enjoyment and perverted kind of materials enjoyment. There's rampant of conflict and argumentation. There's increased lust for power and sexual drive and perversions. I mean, just all you have to do is basically be a little aware of what's going on in the world, and you can see that, and you can see it increasingly get worse and worse. And according to the Vedic system, the Kali Yuga age is supposed to be 435,000 years, of which we've only, broken into 5,000 years or so. And so it's supposed to get progressively worse. And you're thinking, like, well, how could it get much worse than it already is? It will. So, but the fortunate idea is that we have a very simple system. We don't need to follow the rules and regulations. We have a system of that Lord Chaitanya is set as the Sankirtan Yajna, which is the sacrifice prescribed for this age, which is the hearing and repeating of Krishna's names. Very simple, easy, very fun to do, and very, very powerful. So, let me read what Bhaktivedanta has to say here. The rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karma Kanda division of the Vedic literature are to encourage gradual development of self-realization. So the Vedic system was actually split up into 4 different major sections, and there was a different Veda books, I guess you could say, by Srila Vyasadeva, the literary incarnation of Krishna at the beginning of Kali Yuga, because he knew that in this age people's attention would be short, people's ability to learn things or even comprehend spiritual concepts would be limited and not available. People would be just like all the things I've basically been saying about how people act in this world. Because previously people would hear these from their spiritual master and they would memorize it immediately because their consciousness was clean. It was much more elevated, more inclined towards spiritual matters. So Srila Vyasadeva wrote these things down. And that's an interesting story, as we know in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that he was dissatisfied with writing all these things down, and then his spiritual master instructed upon him, you forgot to basically talk about the pastimes of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore that was the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that was the essence of the Vedas. So, the rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karma Kanda division of the Vedic literature are to encourage gradual development of self-realization. And the purpose of self-realization is clearly stated in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of studying the Veda is to know Lord Krishna, the primeval cause of everything. That is the pinnacle, to know God. That is the pinnacle of all religion, actually. So self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. This is what self-realization is. This is what Bhagavad Gita is. It's understanding that there is this eternal relationship that you have with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we've currently decided that we found something better, as is Arjuna. So we see here, once again, it's reflective in the text itself. Arjuna thinks he knows better. He thinks he has his own way of doing things. And Krishna's like, you're missing the point completely. You know, you're talking very intelligently. And people do talk very intelligently. They try to figure things out with their mind without even really seeing the most obvious conclusion of all the scripture. The relationship of the living entities with Krishna is also mentioned in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The living entities are parts and parcels of Krishna. Therefore, revival of Krishna consciousness by the individual living entity is the highest perfectional stage of Vedic knowledge. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam as follows. O my Lord, a person who is chanting your holy name, although born of a low family like that of a Chandala, dog-eater, is situated on the highest platform of self-realization. So it doesn't matter like whether you're born as a low class, or a bum. If you are engaging in the process of hearing and chanting Krishna's names, as we've seen in Lord Chaitanya's time, he actually saved so many fallen souls because they began chanting his names. So let me just read again here. There's a lot here. So one must be intelligent enough to understand the purpose of the Vedas without being attached to the rituals only, and must not desire to be elevated to the heavenly kingdoms for a better quality of sense gratification. This is kind of reflected in the West, is that people trying to what they call salvation in Christianity, but it's actually elevationism. That people want to maybe sacrifice a little bit in this life to go to heaven and be with their family and their dogs, and they do good deeds, and this is very similar to this idea of just like I want to go on and enjoy in heaven from here on out. This is not the purpose of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is reinstating, remembering our relationship with Krishna for the sake of remembering our relationship with Krishna. That's love for Krishna is really what we're attaining. It is not possible for the common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulation of the Vedic rituals and injunctions of the Vedantas and the Upanishads. It requires much time, energy, knowledge, and resource to execute the purposes of the Vedas. This is hardly possible in this age. So, yes, in this current age, as we said, our capability of even remembering where we put our car keys, or, like, what did we do an hour ago? What were we doing? It's like, we don't even have the ability. I mean, these kinds of rules and regulations, these yogis in the past ages were meditating for thousands of years and living off of air. I mean, there's no way. People who try to do these things are just wasting their time. It's very much easier to chant Krishna's names. It's much more fun than eating air. So they're making this point that the best purpose of the Vedanta philosophy is served inoffensively chanting the holy name of the Lord. And Vedanta is the last word of Vedic wisdom, and the author, knower of the Vedanta philosophy, is Lord Krishna, and the highest Vedantist is a great soul who takes pleasure in chanting the holy names of the Lord. That is the ultimate purpose of all Vedic mysticism. So you have some yogic, ideas that God is this great impersonal, and we are all part of, we are all God, and we have to come to know God, and this is the conclusion of the Vedic philosophy. But actually, the conclusion of the Vedic philosophy is Lord Krishna, and chanting the holy names and having that loving relationship with Krishna. So it is a personal, philosophical and spiritual path. And anybody who teaches otherwise has not the full, what Bhaktivedanta would call a poor fund of knowledge, because it's all right here in the Bhagavad Gita. So he goes on to say, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, just engage in this activity of, you are a warrior in this life. This is your duty. Not all of us are warriors. Some of us are teachers. Some of us are, farmers or, parents. So we have different duties to do, but we can do these activities in the service of God, and we should perform it, but we are not entitled to the fruits of that action. In other words, we may be getting fruits from doing those things, but the goal is not to, okay, I'm going to do these things so I can enjoy these things as a separate thing, which is what Arjuna was trying to do. He was like, I don't want to fight, I don't want to kill. So there it was like, I want to enjoy my family members, and I want to enjoy going off to the forest to be a yogi. But Krishna was like, no, you're a warrior. You should just do what you want, because the battle of Kurukshetra was all part of Krishna's plan anyway. So there's a lot to be said for that. So sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times, we come into these conflicts with wanting to do our own will for our own pleasure, which is frankly why we're here in the material world. We want to be Krishna. We want to have all the great happiness of trying to enjoy our senses to the full and whatnot, and it just fails miserably because we're not the supreme controller, nor can we actually enjoy the things that not fully. We're never satisfied by them, because it's like, trying to lick a honey jar from the outside of the jar, because we are not, as spirit souls, not really getting that full connection by trying to engage in matter. And so as spiritual entities, we need spiritual food, and this is the spiritual food that we engage in. We engage in reinstating our relationship with Krishna, which is ever so much more satisfying. There are 3 considerations here, okay? Prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. So that's very interesting, because he was saying prescribed duties, okay, the things that you need to do in your service, right? Capricious work, just doing things for not, which can also be not doing what you should be doing, but doing these things that are sort of like not sinful and not really beneficial for your spiritual. And inaction, just not doing what you should be doing. Prescribed duties refers to activities performed while one is in the modes of material nature. So that's a whole nother thing right there, and we can get into that another time. But we know about the modes of material nature as being the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance, which these kinds of material natures affect the living entity to one degree or another through food, through music, through activity, through the things that where we live, everything basically. So we have the mode of goodness, which is a very peaceful, kind of happy sort of situation, maybe being out by the beach on the sunrise. Or we have the mode of passion where we're actively doing things and have to, our sex life is very mode of passion. Or we do mode of ignorance, which is sleeping. And these modes all have a particular function in the material world. We have to use these things, but we don't want to put ourselves unnecessarily into the modes of ignorance or the modes of passion. We want to try to keep as much as in the modes of goodness, which is easier to engage in spiritual life. That's a whole other thing. The Lord advised that Arjuna not be inactive. So he's saying, don't go off to be the yogi. You should be active. But that he performs his prescribed duty without being attached to the result. So he did do this as an offering to me. So karma yoga is once again doing service for God in the actions that we do in this material world as a service for God. For example, I could be a teacher, and my teaching propensities I'm using it for this class to read about the Bhagavad Gita, to tell you about what my spiritual master, because I've been trained in a way to act, efficiently tell you about something as a teacher, right? So therefore, I'm using my teaching capacity. I could even be teaching, at a school, which I do sometimes. But then I use that money, and I use it for Krishna conscious activity. So I'm not necessarily directly, while I'm teaching kids, giving them things about Krishna necessarily, but I'm doing an activity that I'm making money from, that I'm going to actually use in the service of Krishna towards myself, my family, and others. So this can be applied on any level, depending on what your ability is. So I try to do my best I can with the teaching, but I don't get overly attached to whether these things succeed or these things fail, right? That's what Krishna is saying here. Just do them as an offering for me and not worry about what the result, because the result is, once again, something that you're attached to and you want to enjoy. We're doing this as a service to Krishna, right? So one is attached to the result of his work is also a cause of the action. Thus he is the enjoyer or sufferer of the results of such actions. So this is all about karma yoga. And you can go into chapter 3 and read about karma yoga. Be steadfast in yoga. This is the next verse, right? O Arjuna, perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. Krishna tells Arjuna that he should act in yoga. So here we come back to this idea of yoga, which is sort of a multifarious word, right? We've talked a little bit about the main definition of it. What is that yoga? Yoga means to concentrate the mind upon the Supreme by controlling the ever-disturbing senses, right? So that is that relationship, that reconnecting. And we do this yoga by primarily, there's many things that we do in the activities of sadhana bhakti, but the hearing and repeating of Krishna's names is the prime benediction, right, of acting in yoga. And that's what we're instructed by our spiritual teacher. And because he himself is telling Arjuna, so, and who is the Supreme? The Supreme is the Lord. And because he himself is telling Arjuna to fight, Arjuna has nothing to do with the results of the fight. Gain or victory are Krishna's concerns, right? So whether this goes one way or this goes the other way, we don't need to really worry about that. We take shelter of Krishna. We take shelter of his ever, of his compassion, of his mercy, of his love. And we take shelter just like a child would take shelter of a mother. You know, it doesn't say, the child doesn't think, how good are you as a mother? Or do you have a degree in being a mother? Or, you know, maybe you should hold me with two hands. You know, where are you going? It's like, you don't sit there and like, as a baby, just is like, oh, that's my mother, right? So we don't worry about these things. We do these things in Krishna service. We take shelter in the service to Krishna, and that is where our refuge is. Arjuna is simply advised to act according to the dictation of Krishna. The following of Krishna's dictation is real yoga, and this is practicing the process of Krishna consciousness. By Krishna consciousness only can one give up the sense of proprietorship. One has to become the servant of Krishna, or the servant of Krishna, right? The spiritual teacher. We become the servant of our spiritual teacher and take shelter of our spiritual teacher because he is the representative of Krishna. That is the right way to discharge duty in Krishna consciousness, which alone can help one to act in yoga. Arjuna is a kshatriya, which is a warrior or administrator, right? And as such, he is participating in the Varnashram Dharma institution. Another big word. We'll get into that. And we've talked about that in the past, so if you don't know about that, we can come back to that another time. It is said in the Vishnu Purana that in the Varnashram Dharma, the whole aim is to satisfy Vishnu. No one should satisfy himself, as is the rule in the material world, but one should satisfy Krishna. Well, that is a very interesting thing. Everybody is trying to satisfy themselves in this material world. And reflecting upon this kind of idea, people feel like this is the best bet, but they don't understand why it is there's so much war, there's so much greed, why it is that people are exploiting the environment. They miss the point completely, is because they have made themselves into God. Whether they say that or not, they see themselves as the center of the material world, and everything should be served, they should serve them, right? And so what happens is that everybody's doing that, so everybody's trying to exploit everyone else. We're exploiting the environment around us by trying to consume to serve ourselves. And we're never satisfied. Nobody's satisfied. We have the highest suicide rate in the United States in 2022 ever. We have drug problems. We have suicide problems. We have a war in the Middle East and elsewhere. People in conflict. Nobody and everybody is trying to be little gods, right? Everybody is saying this belongs to me, or this belongs to the collective me, as far as like my country. They don't understand that everything belongs to God, actually. Nothing belongs to us. So, unless one satisfies Krishna, one cannot correctly observe the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Indirectly, Krishna was advised to act as Krishna told him. So, Krishna is ultimately stating in the Bhagavad Gita, and just in everything, just surrender unto me. I will give you protection from all sinful activity. And this sinful activity is trying to find the happiness by doing it ourselves. Let me rephrase that. So when we're doing things by ourselves, it's doing things under the dictation of Krishna. Krishna gives us the instructions. Our spiritual teacher gives us the instructions as a representative of Krishna. We follow those instructions, and therefore, as Jesus Christ says, I and my Father are one, and will, because, if you know of my Father, you'll know that he has sent me, Right? These things that Jesus says also is very similar. The spiritual teacher is also following his spiritual teacher's instructions, applying them in his life, and handing them down. Therefore, he is capable of handing down that information, which is non-different from Krishna. Because Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, is acting as a spiritual master to Arjuna. Even though he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is still a spiritual master. And this is the way that parampara, or the spiritual lineage of teachers, works. It's like handing down the mango very carefully. You apply it, you taste it, or you put it in your life, and you see the results, and you hand it down again. So there's a lot to be said here. This Bhagavad Gita, as it is a wonderful, wonderful scripture and treatise on spiritual life. So it's very important to take a little bit every day and reflect and meditate upon the Bhagavad Gita. And of course, the greatest form of following Krishna's instruction and following the spiritual master's instructions is to hear and chant Krishna's names. So that's what we're going to do now. So I thank you very much for tuning in. And just a reminder that you can always go back into the library of the Facebook library for Yoga Kirtan Hawaii to listen to any of these classes or do kirtan or learn more about things. But we also have a YouTube channel, so I would highly recommend going to our YouTube channel, and I can probably try to put a link in there just so that you don't get lost in trying to search for sometimes those things. You type things out and it never shows up. It comes up with something else. But you can please subscribe to our YouTube channel and make comments and share the videos so that many others can hear and benefit from these things. If you're more interested in learning about yoga wisdom, you can also go to SIF.org, which is the Science of Identity Foundation website. It has philosophy for my spiritual teacher, Guru Bhaktivedanta, and others. So, Haribol. Haribol. Okay, that's all for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Till then, have a wonderful and restful evening. All right, boy.